Sarah Mercer had always considered herself a practical woman. She didn't believe in dramatic gestures or unnecessary suspicion. She believed in routines, in trust, in the quiet architecture of a marriage built over 11 years. So when Daniel kissed her at the departure terminal that Friday evening, she squeezed his hand, told him to text her when he landed, and drove home through the autumn rain without a single anxious thought. That was who she was. Or at least, that was who she had been. The house felt bigger when Daniel traveled. It always did. Their 3-bedroom home in the suburbs of Portland seemed to exhale when it was just Sarah moving through its rooms, cooking something simple for herself, watching the shows Daniel never had patience for, sleeping diagonally across their king-sized bed with something almost like relief. She loved her husband. But she also loved the small, quiet version of herself that only appeared when he was away. She made pasta that night, poured a glass of red wine, and called her best friend, Jenna, to confirm plans for the following evening. 8 o'clock, Jenna reminded her. And we're something nice for once. It's my 35th, Sarah. I'm not spending it watching you in a cardigan. Sarah laughed. I own exactly one dress that isn't a cardigan. Then wear that. She went to bed early, read for an hour, and fell asleep to the sound of rain against the window. Daniel texted around 10, checked in. Long day. Miss you. She replied with a heart and set her phone face down on the nightstand. She did not dream of anything troubling. The restaurant Jenna had chosen was called Aurelia, one of those places Sarah always walked past but never entered, the kind with candles on every table and a wine list the size of a novel. It sat on the corner of Morrison Street, its windows fogged softly from the warmth inside, golden light spilling onto the wet pavement. Sarah arrived a few minutes early, shaking rain from her umbrella on the doorstep. She was wearing the dress, navy blue, simple, something Daniel had once said made her look like herself. She felt slightly overdressed and slightly underdressed at the same time, which was her usual state in places like this. The maitre d' smiled and asked for her reservation. She gave Jenna's name and followed him toward the back of the restaurant. That was when she saw him. She almost didn't register it at first. Her brain processed the information in strange, disconnected pieces. A navy jacket she recognized, a particular way of tilting the head while listening, a laugh she had heard 10,000 times across 1,000 different dinner tables. Daniel, sitting by the window, candlelight catching the side of his face, relaxed in a way he rarely looked at home anymore, and across from him, a woman. Dark-haired, beautiful in an effortless way, leaning forward with her chin resting on her hand. She was laughing at something Daniel had said. And Daniel was holding her hand across the table, his thumb moving in that slow, absent-minded circle he used to trace on Sarah's wrist when they first started dating. Sarah stopped walking. The maitre d' turned, confused. Ma'am? She couldn't finish the sentence. Her mouth had forgotten how to form words. The world had gone very still, the way it does in the seconds after a car accident, before the pain arrives. She stepped sideways, behind a column near the entrance, and stood there breathing. Just breathing. Her heart was hammering so loudly she was sure the people at the nearest table could hear it. He's supposed to be in Seattle. He said Seattle. He showed me the hotel confirmation. She looked again. It was unmistakably Daniel. The same hands. The same jacket. The same smile he'd given her at the airport less than 24 hours ago. Without thinking clearly about what she was doing or why, Sarah took out her phone and took a photograph. The image was slightly blurry, taken from behind a column in a dim restaurant, but it was enough. His face was turned just enough toward the window. The woman was clearly visible. Their joined hands were clearly visible. She texted Jenna. Something came up. I'm so sorry. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Happy birthday. I love you. Then she walked back out into the rain and stood on the pavement for a very long time, the cold working its way through her dress, her phone clenched in both hands like something she needed to hold onto. She did not cry. Not yet. Sarah had always been methodical. It was what made her good at her job. She was a freelance researcher for a legal consulting firm, which meant she spent her days finding things people had tried to hide. Documents. Records. Patterns of behavior buried in spreadsheets and email threads. She was professionally speaking, very good at discovering the truth. She had simply never expected to need that skill in her own home. She started that same night, still in her dress, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop and the cold remains of a cup of tea. She told herself she was being rational. She told herself there might be an explanation. A colleague. A client. A family member she hadn't met. People held hands with family members, didn't they? She tried to believe this. She was a practical woman. She began with Daniel's email. She knew his password. They had shared it years ago, during a period when she used to help him sort through his inbox while he was driving. He had never changed it. She had never used it. Until now, she typed it in and sat very quietly while his inbox loaded. It took her 40 minutes to find the thread. It was buried under folders inside folders, labeled with the name of an actual client so that it would appear mundane if glimpsed accidentally. The woman's name was Claire Ashworth. The thread went back 14 months. Sarah read every email. She read them the way she read case documents at work, carefully, without allowing herself to react until she had the full picture. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. She highlighted dates. She noticed which of Daniel's business trips had overlapping hotel confirmations that didn't match the cities his company's calendar showed. By 2 in the morning, the picture was complete. Claire Ashworth was not a colleague or a client. She was a graphic designer based in Portland, which meant she had been here, in their city, the entire time. The trips to Seattle, to San Francisco, to Chicago, some of them were real. Others were cover. Weekends when he was allegedly presenting at conferences, he had been 40 minutes away in a hotel with Claire. It had been going on for over a year. Sarah set down her pen and looked at her notes. 14 months. She counted again. Yes. 14 months ago, Daniel had come home from a work event and told her he loved her, and they had eaten dinner together, and she had told him about a difficult client, and he had listened and nodded and refilled her wine. All while this had already been happening, she thought about the way he'd kissed her at the airport. She closed the laptop. She did not sleep. In the morning, she called Jenna. She told her everything in the measured, precise tone she used for work calls, as if she were reporting findings to a client. Jenna was not measured or precise in response. Jenna used language that Sarah didn't typically hear outside of action films, and offered to drive over immediately with coffee and what she described as necessary rage. Not yet, Sarah said. I need to think first. Sarah, I know what he did. I've read all of it. I need to think about what I do next. That's different. A long silence. Then Jenna said, quietly, what are you going to do? Sarah looked out the kitchen window at the garden Daniel had planted 2 summers ago. The rose bushes he'd been so proud of. They had gone overgrown because he was never home enough to maintain them. I don't know yet, she said. But I'm not going to do anything until he walks through that door and lies to my face one more time. Daniel came home Sunday evening looking tired and faintly apologetic in the way he always did after trips, the expression of a man who knew he'd been absent and wanted credit for noticing. He set his bag down by the door and hugged her, and Sarah let herself be hugged. She noticed, with the detached clarity of the last 48 hours, that he smelled different. A different soap. She had bought all of his toiletries for years. She knew exactly what he was supposed to smell like. Missed you, he said into her hair. How was the trip, she asked. He pulled back and gave her a tired smile. Long. The meetings ran over. You know how it is. Seattle weather okay? Cold. Rainy. He moved past her toward the kitchen. Is there anything to eat? I'm starving. Of course you are, she thought. Lying is exhausting. She had made dinner. She had done this deliberately, set the table, cooked his favorite, opened a bottle of wine. She wanted him comfortable. She wanted him to believe everything was exactly as he'd left it. They sat across from each other and he talked about the trip. She had to give him credit, he was a skilled liar. His details were specific and consistent. He mentioned a colleague named Tom who had apparently said something funny in a meeting. He mentioned the hotel gym, which he always complained about on real trips. He was painting a complete picture with the casual fluency of long practice. She watched him and thought, "Who are you?" Not with anger, not yet. With something more disorienting. With genuine bewilderment at the distance between the man she thought she'd married and the man sitting across from her, eating pasta and describing a fictional weekend. "You seem quiet," he said. "Tired," she said. "Jenna's birthday ran late." He nodded, reaching for his wine. "How is she?" "She's good," Sarah said. "We had dinner at Aurelia. On Morrison Street. Have you heard of it?" Something moved across his face. A small, barely perceptible thing, a tightening at the corner of his eye, a half-second delay before he answered. "Don't think so," he said. She held his gaze for a moment and then looked down at her plate. "It's nice," she said. "You should take me there sometime." She waited 3 more days. Not out of cowardice. Out of strategy. She spent those 3 days doing what she was trained to do, building a complete file. She printed the emails. She created a timeline. She looked up Claire Ashworth's name and found her website, her social media, her professional history. She wasn't looking to cause Claire harm, she understood that her anger belonged entirely to Daniel. But she wanted the full truth, not a fragment of it. She also spoke, quietly and privately, to a family law attorney. A woman named Patricia Chen who had been recommended by a colleague and who listened to everything Sarah said with steady, unsurprised attention. "You have considerable documentation," Patricia told her. "That puts you in a strong position." Sarah hadn't been thinking about positions. She'd been thinking about 11 years. About the apartment they'd shared when they were 26 and had no money and used to eat cereal for dinner and laugh about it. About the miscarriage they'd survived together 4 years into the marriage, the way Daniel had held her in the hospital and cried without embarrassment. About the rosebushes. But she was also thinking about a woman at a candlelit table, laughing at something her husband said while Sarah had been home, alone, trusting him completely. She confronted him on a Wednesday evening. She waited until dinner was finished and the kitchen was clean and they were sitting in the living room, the normal architecture of their evenings. Then she set her phone on the coffee table between them, the photograph face up. Daniel and Claire, window lit, hand in hand. Daniel looked at it. The silence that followed was unlike any silence Sarah had ever experienced in that house. "Sarah." "Don't," she said. Her voice was calm. She had practiced being calm and she was grateful for the practice. "I've read the emails. I know about the hotel in Portland. I know about the weekend in November when you told me the conference ran long. I know it's been 14 months. He looked up at her then, and his face had collapsed into something she didn't recognize. Not the tired businessman face or the loving husband face. Something underneath both of those. "I don't want explanations right now," she continued. "I want to tell you what I've decided." He nodded slowly, the way people nod when they're in shock. "I've spoken to a lawyer. I'd like you to stay somewhere else while we figure out the next steps. I've looked at our finances and I understand our situation. I'm not interested in a dramatic scene and I'm not interested in hearing about her or how it happened or how sorry you are tonight." She paused. "Tonight I just need you to leave. Sarah, please, if we could just talk." "We will talk," she said. "Through our lawyers, and eventually in person when I'm ready. But not tonight." He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time, the photos on the shelf, the books they'd accumulated together, the small evidence of a shared life stacked in every corner. "I love you," he said. "I know that doesn't mean anything right now, but I need you to know I..." "Daniel." She said his name quietly and it stopped him completely. "I know you believe that. But love is not what you've been doing for the last 14 months. Please go." He packed a bag. She sat in the kitchen and listened to him move through the rooms above her. When she heard the front door close, she put her face in her hands. She did not fall apart. But she sat there for a long time in the quiet house, letting herself feel the full, crushing weight of it before she stood up and made herself a cup of tea. The divorce took 8 months. It was not a battle. Sarah had not wanted a battle, and in the end, Daniel did not fight her. He was guilty and he knew it, and somewhere under the guilt, Sarah suspected, he was also relieved. That was the thing she had to make her peace with, that he had been living a double life not because he was a monster, but because he had been too cowardly to end one life before beginning another. He was weak in the specific, ordinary way that caused most of the real damage in the world. She kept the house. She kept her name. She took up the habit of running in the mornings, which she had always meant to do and never had. Jenna threw her a small, deliberately unsomber dinner party on the night the divorce was finalized. 5 people, good wine, a cake that said Chapter 2 in frosting because Jenna believed in the therapeutic power of dramatic gestures. "How do you feel?" Jenna asked her later, when the others had gone and they were washing dishes together. Sarah thought about it honestly. "Strange," she said. "Like I've been holding my breath for 8 months and I've finally exhaled. But I can't remember yet how to just breathe normally." Jenna handed her a wet plate to dry. "You will." Sarah thought about the woman she had been at the start of this, standing in the rain outside Aurelia in her navy dress, her phone clenched in her hands, the world having quietly rearranged itself into something unrecognizable. She thought about sitting at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning, reading emails with a legal pad and a cold cup of tea, deciding not to fall apart until she understood the whole picture. She had not been broken by this. She had been changed by it, which was different. There were things she had lost that she still mourned in unexpected moments, not Daniel exactly, but the version of her life she had believed in. The particular comfort of a shared history, the shorthand of a long marriage, the sense of being known. Those things had been real, even if they had been built on sand. But she had also discovered something she hadn't known before, that she was capable of sitting across from a man who was lying to her face and remaining composed. That she was capable of building a case, making a plan, and executing it without losing herself in the process. That she could survive the thing she had been most afraid of and find herself, on the other side, still standing. She was a practical woman. She had always known that about herself. But now she knew it in a different, deeper way, the way you know things that have been tested. The rosebushes, she discovered that spring, had not died. They had simply been neglected. She started tending to them on Sunday mornings, learning what they needed, watching them slowly come back. It turned out they were more resilient than anyone had given them credit for. So, it turned out, was she. And